Happy day girls, my name is Sree Akshara Mithran from BCom Accounting and Finance Shift 2. Today I am going to talk about kinds of companies from the subject company law. So first let's see what is companies. So a company is a legal entity formed by a group of individuals to engage in and operate a business or commercial or industrial enterprises. So that means the company is known as a separate legal entity, also known as an artificial person, which has the rights to buy and sell assets and liabilities, and also it can sue and can be sued from any members of the company. Okay. So let's go to the definition. According to section 2 subsection 20 Company Laws Act under 2013, company means a company incorporated under this act or any previous company law. Now let's go to the kinds of companies. In kinds of companies, it is classified into 6 various factors. Let's see, on basis of incorporation, on basis of liabilities, on the basis of number of members or transfer of shares, on the basis of control, on the basis of ownership and others companies. Now first let's see what is classification on the basis of incorporation. In incorporation there are 2 stages, which is statutory companies and registered companies. Statutory companies are companies which follow a special act, which means which is produced by a parliament act or any state legislative act. Companies which follow these act are to be supposed to come as statutory companies. Okay. Now what is registered, for example, RBI, SBI, State Bank of India, these companies do not have private limited companies together. If you see a company, it will state as Reliance Private Limited Company. So now in these kinds of companies you will not have the private limited company. You will only have Reserve Bank of India, you will only have State Bank of India. Okay. Now going further to the registered company, all the companies should be registered under Companies Act 2013. Okay. There are 2 types of companies, which is public and private companies. So all the companies which are registered should come under registered companies. Okay. Now let's go to the next form, classification on basis of liability. Okay. There are 2 types. Okay. There are 2 types, which is companies with limited liabilities and unlimited liabilities. In companies with limited liabilities means that companies which have certain whatever amount they get, they are bound to pay that particular amount only. So in companies with limited liability there are 2 types, which is limited by shares and limited by guarantee. What is limited by shares? It comes under section 2 subsection 22. What is limited by shares? That means whatever paid up capital you have purchased in that company, for that only you will be refunded whatever amount. Let us say for example, you have a paid up, you have bought a share of worth rupees 100 rupees, but you have paid only 80. So the unpaid capital share is 20. So the company is bound to pay only 20 rupees back to you. Okay. Now let us go to the next one, limited by guarantee. What is limited by guarantee? By the word guarantee itself means security, right? Whatever amount you are giving to the company for purchasing any assets or company, that amount only you will be liable to regain. For example, you are paying the company 5 lakhs, means that 5 lakh the company is liable to pay you only 5 lakhs at the end of the period. Unlimited liability is nothing but when you purchase, when your company falls under bankruptcy and then later on you have to repay the debt. What happens? Even your personal property is included in unlimited liability. That means you are bound to pay your debt with your personal properties, whatever you have. In classification on the basis of number of members of transfer of shares, you have 2 types, which is private and public companies. In private companies, you have let us say your minimum number of members in your company is 2, and in public limited company it is 7, and in private limited companies your transferring of shares has certain restrictions when it comes to transfer of shares, but in public limited companies you do not have that restrictions. In private limited companies, your maximum number of members is 7 and 200, and in public limited companies it is minimum is 7 and your maximum number of is has no limit of members. For example, private limited companies are Reliance limited companies, private limited companies, and public limited companies is like State Bank India and Reserve Bank India. Classification on the basis of control. Classifications on the basis of control has two types, which is holding companies and subsidiary companies. Holding companies are companies which are being controlled by any other companies. For example, Bajaj group of companies have their holding company as Bajaj Holdings. So, the Bajaj Holding is one of the holding companies by Bajaj group. Now, let us go to the next one, which is a subsidiary company. Subsidiary companies are various branches of companies which are formed by the mother parent company. Let us say for example, Reliance Limited companies. Reliance Limited companies has various branches like Agio, Reliance Trends, etc., right. So, that is known as classification on the basis of control. Next, let us go to the classifications on the basis of ownership, which is of two types. One is government companies and the second is foreign companies. Government companies under section 2 subsection 40 means that various like for example RBI, Reserve Bank of India, Indian Railways, all are government limited companies which hold the 51% of their shares. Foreign companies are nothing but which are incorporated outside India and has their operations in India. That is known as a foreign company. Example, Google, Amazon. The other types of companies are nothing but a one-person company which has a one-member company only in the company. It is basically like a startup. So, all this is called a private, a one-person company can only be a private company. So, a small company is also similar to a one-person company, but all small companies need not be a startup and all small companies need not be a private limited company. So, a small company can be also a public company. It is also a startup, but basically the dormant company is nothing but which has been a very inactive company for pretty a long time, a period of time and so. So, that is it. Thank you. I hope you have understood this topic, kinds of companies. Thank you.